Malika did not move first. Tasha did. Her sister folded the termination letter once, then twice, as if making it smaller could make the humiliation smaller too. The paper would not stay flat. Kept springing open in her fingers. "I need to sit down," Tasha whispered. That was when Malika stopped looking at Derek and put both hands on her sister's shoulders. "Come with me." Monica stepped in front of the office door. "She can collect her things through the proper channel." Malika looked at her calmly. "She is 7 months pregnant, Monica. Move." Something in her voice made the hallway quiet. Even the line cook carrying a tray of appetizers slowed down. Tasha tried to apologize because people like Tasha had been trained to say sorry even while being wounded. Malika guided her past the storage shelves, past the employee lockers, into the small restroom where the mirror had a crack across one corner and the sink dripped every 4 seconds. She locked the door, wet a paper towel, and pressed it against the back of Tasha's neck. "Breathe with me." Tasha's chest rose too fast. Her name tag hung crooked on her blouse. Her ankles were swollen above black work shoes polished for a dinner she had been proud to help serve. "I can't lose the insurance," she said. "The baby's appointment is next week." Malika's face tightened, but her hands stayed gentle. She pulled out her phone and called Tasha's clinic, her voice steady enough to get instructions, soft enough not to scare her sister. When the nurse told them to watch the tightening in Tasha's stomach, Malika crouched in front of her and counted breaths out loud until Tasha's fingers loosened from the edge of the sink. Outside, music began in the dining room. A saxophone version of a love song drifted through the wall while Malika helped her sister wipe mascara from under one eye. Then she took the termination notice from Tasha's lap and smoothed it against the counter. The backdated lines stared up at her like a small, neat lie. "I'm going to ask for your file." Tasha shook her head. "Don't. Not tonight. You'll lose him." Malika looked at the diamond on her finger. For a second, the old dream stood there between them. The safe house, the joint account, the mother who could finally stop worrying, the man who had promised to love her in front of everyone. Then Malika slid the ring around once with her thumb and let it stay. "If keeping him means watching him do this to you, then I never had him." She walked back into the hallway with the notice in her hand. Derek was waiting near the office, jaw tight, smile gone. "Tasha needs to leave through the back," he said. "Guests are arriving. She needs her employee file, her accommodation request, her last 3 schedules, and the policy you used to terminate her." Monica laughed once, light and offended. "You do not have authority to request that." "No," Malika said. "Tasha does. And I'm standing here as her witness." Derek stepped close enough that his cologne covered the smell of bleach. "Think very carefully before you turn our engagement dinner into some legal performance." "I am thinking carefully." Malika opened the camera on her phone and placed it face up on the filing cabinet. "Tasha, say clearly that you are requesting a copy of your personnel file." Tasha stood in the restroom doorway, one hand under her belly, the other gripping the doorframe. Her voice shook, but it came out. "I am requesting a copy of my personnel file." Monica's eyes flashed toward Derek. That glance cost her. Malika saw it. Derek reached for the phone, but Malika stepped back. "Touch it. And that becomes part of the record too." For the first time that evening, Derek looked less like a fiancé and more like an owner who had discovered a locked door inside his own building. He turned, opened the office drawer, and threw a thin folder onto the desk. "There, take it. And after tonight, don't expect me to clean up what you break." Malika picked up the folder. Inside was almost nothing. 1 warning letter, 1 performance review, 1 page with Tasha's electronic signature printed at the bottom. The signature was too smooth, too centered, too clean. Tasha stared at it. "I didn't sign that." Before Malika could answer, her phone buzzed. Derek had removed her from the shared engagement account. Then another message came from the apartment leasing office. Derek had requested that her name be taken off the pending application. The cost of choosing her sister had arrived in 2 quiet notifications. Malika closed the folder against her chest, feeling the edge of the fake signature press through the paper. From the dining room, Evelyn Whitmore's voice rang out, bright and proud, welcoming both families to celebrate trust, loyalty, and the future. Malika looked at the closed office drawer, then at Monica's gold key-shaped pin catching the light on her blazer, and one question settled cold in her mind. If Tasha never signed the review, who had signed her name? Malika slipped the folder under her arm and followed the sound of Evelyn Whitmore's voice back toward the private dining room. She did not go in yet. She stopped beside the half-open service door, where she could see the polished version of Derek's life without stepping into it. He stood near the bar with his investors, smiling again, one hand resting on a chair he had not paid anyone in that room enough to afford. On the screen behind him, a slideshow played over soft music. Derek cutting a ribbon at a women's shelter. Derek handing a check to a nonprofit for single mothers. Derek beside Malika at a charity brunch with his arm around her waist. Under one photo, gold letters read, "Building safe tables for every family." Tasha sat on a crate behind Malika, breathing slower now, her work shoes planted wide on the tile. She stared at the fake review in the folder like it might change if she looked long enough. "That picture," she whispered. Malika turned. "Which one?" Tasha nodded toward the screen. In the photo, Derek was shaking hands with the director of a maternal support foundation. Tasha gave a small, bitter laugh that never became sound. "He donated to them last month." Malika looked back into the room. Derek had built a brand out of protecting women whose names he never had to remember. On the table near the investors sat a black leather binder stamped with the Whitmore and Stone logo. A man in a gray suit opened it, and Malika caught only a few words on the top page before he turned it. Preliminary acquisition agreement, risk disclosure, employment claims. Her stomach tightened. This was not just about an engagement dinner. This was a room arranged for two ceremonies, one with flowers and one with signatures. Monica came out of the office carrying a tablet against her chest. She passed close enough for Malika to smell mint gum and expensive lotion. The gold key pin on Monica's blazer flashed under the hallway light. "You should fix your face before you walk in," Monica said softly. "Tonight is bigger than your sister's attitude." Malika did not answer. She watched Monica enter the dining room and bend near Derek's ear. Derek's smile held, but his eyes moved toward the service door. Then he touched the leather binder with two fingers, a tiny warning to Monica, or maybe a reminder. Malika stepped backward before he could see her fully. At the end of the hall, the break room door stood open. Inside, a dishwasher named Mr. Alvarez sat with his lunch untouched, turning his cap in both hands. Keisha, the young server from the evening shift, stood by the vending machine pretending to count quarters. Nobody spoke until Malika walked in. Then Keisha glanced at Tasha's belly, at the folder, and finally at Malika. "You need to check the schedule board," she said. Mr. Alvarez lifted his eyes but shook his head once. Not at Keisha, at fear itself. "Don't get in this, baby." Keisha swallowed. "They did it to Renee too. And to Miss Carla before she quit." Malika's fingers closed around the folder. "Did what?" Keisha pulled her phone from her apron and opened a photo with a cracked thumbnail. It showed a printed staff schedule taped to the wall 2 weeks earlier. Tasha's name had been moved from lunch host to closing floor support for nights in a row. Beside it, in blue marker, someone had written probation coverage. Tasha leaned forward. "I told them my doctor said no long-standing shifts." Keisha nodded quickly, eyes shining with the panic of someone who had carried a truth too long. "Monica said if anybody asked, you requested extra hours." Malika studied the photo. Could mean retaliation. It could also be dismissed as scheduling if Derek got to explain it first. That was the trouble with quiet crimes. They were built out of ordinary paper. Keisha lowered her voice. "There's a group chat too. Managers only. My cousin used to work Expo, and she saw one message before they fired her." "What message?" Malika asked. Keisha looked toward the hallway. "Something about moving pregnant staff before review week." Tasha covered her mouth. Mr. Alvarez stood and shut the break room door with one slow push. "You didn't hear that from us," he said. "People got rent." Malika understood then why nobody had spoken before. Derek did not need to shout to keep people silent. He had schedules, health insurance, references, shifts, and the power to turn a paycheck into a punishment. Her phone buzzed again. A text from Derek filled the screen. "Walk into that room smiling, or everyone will know you chose drama over us." Malika looked at the fake signature, then at the photo of the schedule, then at the dining room where her future was being toasted by people who did not know it was already on trial. She could not expose the secret yet, not with half a file, one frightened witness, and a photo Derek's lawyer could call incomplete. But now she knew the lie had roots, and somewhere inside Whitmore and Stone, there was a record Derek needed buried before the night was over. Malika slipped the schedule photo into the inside pocket of her blazer, tucked the personnel folder beneath her arm, and walked toward the double doors leading into the private ballroom. A young hostess in a fitted black dress reached for the brass handle before recognizing her. "Ms. Johnson, they're waiting for you." The words sounded warm, but the hostess's eyes kept darting toward the hallway where Tasha had disappeared. News traveled faster than music inside expensive restaurants. The doors opened. Warm light spilled across polished hardwood floors, bouncing off crystal chandeliers and mirrored walls. Every table held towering white orchids arranged so perfectly that not a single petal leaned out of place. Waiters glided between guests carrying smoked salmon canapes on silver trays, their movements practiced enough to become invisible. Near the center of the room stood a 12-foot digital display cycling through photographs of Derek and Malika's relationship. Vacations, charity galas, ribbon cuttings, fundraising breakfasts, magazine covers featuring Derek beneath headlines about ethical leadership and community investment. A jazz quartet played softly beside the dance floor while investors in tailored suits exchanged business cards with city council members, nonprofit directors, and local media personalities. This was more than an engagement dinner. It was a carefully constructed stage where reputation had a seating chart. Evelyn Whitmore spotted Malika immediately and crossed the room with effortless elegance, her emerald silk gown brushing the floor. She kissed Malika's cheek before anyone could notice the tension in her face. "There you are, sweetheart. We were beginning to worry." Her smile never slipped, but her fingers tightened briefly around Malika's wrist. "Whatever happened with your sister, tonight must stay beautiful." Malika gently eased her hand free. "Beauty doesn't disappear because someone tells the truth." Evelyn's smile paused for the smallest fraction of a second before returning. "You'll learn that timing matters more than truth in rooms like this." She turned gracefully as another guest approached, leaving the sentence hanging like perfume in the air. Malika understood then that Evelyn was not cruel in the obvious way Derek could be. She believed appearances protected families. To her, silence was maturity. Across the ballroom, Monica Blake stood beside the event coordinator reviewing place settings on a tablet. She looked every bit the polished executive, thanking servers by name, straightening a centerpiece, complimenting a young bartender on his tie. Anyone watching would have called her kind. Only Malika had seen the same gentle smile while Monica handed a pregnant woman a termination notice. Their eyes met across the room. Monica lifted her champagne glass slightly, almost like a toast. It was not friendliness. It was a warning. A maitre d' approached Malika carrying a leather portfolio embossed with the restaurant's logo. "Mr. Whitmore asked if you could review tonight's remarks before the welcome speech." Malika accepted it without hesitation. Inside were printed introductions, donor acknowledgments, and Derek's prepared toast. The final paragraph caught her attention. "Whitmore and Stone has always believed that every employee is treated like family." Her thumb rested on that sentence. She almost laughed. Instead, she quietly closed the folder. Derek appeared beside her before she saw him coming. "You look better," he said, adjusting the cuff of his jacket as though nothing had happened. "That's good." Malika studied him. "Did you rehearse that?" "Rehearse what?" "Pretending today didn't happen." His jaw tightened for only a heartbeat before the charming expression returned. "Tonight isn't the place." "No," she replied evenly. "Tonight is exactly the place. You invited witnesses." Before Derek could answer, a man with silver hair and a charcoal suit stepped toward them. "Derek." His voice carried the calm confidence of someone accustomed to making expensive decisions. "We're almost ready to discuss the acquisition after dinner." Derek straightened immediately. "Of course, Mr. Holloway." He turned toward Malika. "This is Richard Holloway, lead partner at Crescent Capital." Holloway shook Malika's hand firmly. "I've heard wonderful things about you. Derek says you're the reason he finally learned to slow down." Malika held his gaze. People usually reveal who they are when they believe slowing down costs them something. Holloway studied her for an extra second before nodding politely and moving away. Derek's smile disappeared the moment the investor was out of earshot. "You don't understand what's at stake." "Then explain it." He didn't. Instead, he leaned closer. "Stay beside me through dinner. Smile for the photographs. We can discuss your sister tomorrow." Malika looked past him toward the head table where two empty chairs waited beneath a floral arch. One carried her name. The other carried Derek's. Between them sat a gold-bound guest book and a silver fountain pen. Nearby, Monica quietly slipped her tablet into a locked leather briefcase before handing the key to an unfamiliar man wearing an executive security badge. The exchange lasted less than 3 seconds, but Malika saw it. Monica wasn't protecting paperwork anymore. She was protecting access. And whatever had just been locked inside that briefcase was valuable enough to move before the first toast had even begun. Malika did not follow Derek to the head table right away. She let the servers pass with trays of glazed shrimp and miniature cornbread squares, then moved toward the small side station where extra menus, seating charts, and event notes were stacked beneath a lamp. To anyone watching, she looked like a bride checking dinner details. Her left hand rested lightly on the gold-bound guest book, the diamond on her finger catching the chandelier light each time she turned a page. But her right hand worked quietly beneath the table, opening her phone, copying dates, building a timeline one note at a time. Tasha's pregnancy accommodation request. The sudden closing shifts. The backdated termination notice. The fake performance review. The acquisition dinner hidden inside an engagement party. Malika had spent 6 years as a legal assistant reading contracts other people signed too quickly. She knew how power hid in harmless phrases. At-will employment, performance-based separation, management discretion, words that sounded neutral until someone used them like a blade. Keisha approached with a tray of champagne flutes, her eyes fixed forward like she was trained not to see anything. When she reached Malika, one glass had a folded cocktail napkin tucked beneath it. Malika lifted the glass and felt the paper stick to the damp stem. Keisha kept walking, but her fingers brushed Malika's wrist for half a second. It was not dramatic. It was not brave in a way anyone would applaud. It was the kind of courage poor workers used when they could not afford to be seen having courage. Malika unfolded the napkin under the table. Written in blue pen were 3 words and a number. Break room. 9:14. Her pulse slowed, not because she was calm, but because a piece had finally moved. She glanced toward the locked briefcase. The executive security guard stood beside it near the wall, pretending to watch the exits. Monica was at the bar now, laughing with Evelyn and a city councilwoman, one hand resting over the gold key pin on her blazer. Derek took the microphone near the front. "Everyone, please find your seats," he said warmly. "Tonight is about family." Guests smiled. Chairs scraped softly. Forks touched plates. Malika stepped away before he could call her name. In the narrow passage behind the kitchen, the noise of the ballroom became muffled, replaced by the hiss of burners and the dull chop of knives. Keisha waited near the employee bulletin board with her tray tucked under one arm. Beside her stood Mr. Alvarez, no longer turning his cap, but gripping it like he had decided fear would not be the only thing in his hands tonight. "I can't talk long," Keisha whispered. "They're checking who leaves the floor." Malika kept her voice low. "You don't have to say anything you're not ready to stand behind." That made Keisha look at her differently. Not like a bride. Not like Derek's woman. Like someone who understood that truth could cost rent. Keisha pulled up a photo on her phone. It showed the staff schedule board again, but this time the corner of Monica's tablet was visible in the frame, reflecting a group chat notification across the dark screen. The message was blurred, but one line could be read. Move pregnant staff before review week. No exceptions before Crescent closes. Malika's throat tightened. Crescent. Crescent Capital. Mr. Holloway. The acquisition was not background. It was motive. Send me the original, Malika said. Keisha hesitated. If they trace it, send it to my legal mentor, not me. Malika typed the number from memory. Metadata stays cleaner that way. And if anyone asks, you were never alone with me. Mr. Alvarez nodded once, as if that answer had given him permission to breathe. There are logs, he said. IT logs. Monica resets employee passwords when she wants signatures. She says it's for onboarding cleanup. Malika looked at him. Who has access? He pointed toward the locked briefcase through the kitchen window. Tonight? That man. They moved the tablet after you asked for the file. Malika turned the information over quickly. She did not have the logs. She did not have a witness on record. But she had enough to stop being reactive. She opened Derek's. Prepared toast in the leather portfolio and used the back of a menu to write 4 dates in a column. Then she placed Tasha's termination date beside the Crescent closing deadline. The pattern was ugly. It was also clear. From the ballroom, applause rose as Derek began thanking the women who shaped his heart. Malika looked down at her engagement ring. A few hours ago it had meant promise. Now it felt like a lock someone had polished until it sparkled. She slid it off, held it in her palm, then put it back on. Not as surrender, but as cover. If Derek wanted the room to believe she was still standing beside him, she would let that belief buy her a few more minutes. When she returned to the ballroom, Richard Holloway was watching her from near the wine display. His expression was unreadable. Monica's was not. Her smile had disappeared completely. She leaned toward Derek while he spoke, whispered something, and his fingers tightened around the microphone. Then the large screen behind him flickered once, and Malika saw a file name appear for less than a second before the slideshow resumed. Tasha review final. Derek kept smiling, but his eyes found Malika across the room. The next attack was already loaded. The file name vanished from the screen so quickly that most guests never noticed it. But Malika saw the way Derek's shoulders settled afterward, like a man who had just found the weapon he wanted. Before we continue, he said into the microphone, his voice still warm, I want to speak about Grace. The word moved through the ballroom sweetly. People lifted their faces. Evelyn smiled with relief. Monica stood beside the AV table now, one hand on the back of the young technician's chair, the other holding her tablet like a hymnal. Derek looked toward Malika, then toward the service hallway where Tasha had been taken to rest. Every family has difficult moments, he said. Every business has employees who struggle. But leadership means telling the truth even when the truth is uncomfortable. A cold line traveled down Malika's spine. She did not move. Moving too soon would make her look guilty before she knew the shape of the lie. Derek clicked the remote in his hand. The screen changed from engagement photos to a document headed Performance Improvement Review. Tasha's name sat at the top in bold letters. Beneath it were neat bullet points. Repeated tardiness, customer complaints, refusal to complete assigned shifts, inappropriate use of pregnancy as excuse for poor performance. A few guests murmured. Someone at the table near Evelyn covered her mouth. Derek lowered his eyes as if the whole thing hurt him. It was a beautiful performance. I did not want this shown tonight, he said. But I will not allow anyone to paint this company as cruel because we hold every employee to the same standard. Monica stepped forward just enough to be seen. Her face carried the gentle sadness of a woman forced to defend order. We offered support, she added softly. Unfortunately, support was rejected. That was what made the lie dangerous. They did not sound angry. They sounded disappointed. They sounded responsible. They sounded like the kind of people wealthy rooms believe first. Malika felt phones lifting around the room. Not all the way, not openly, but enough. A cousin from Derek's side leaned toward another and whispered, so the sister caused a scene. Malika's mother sat frozen at the family table, her napkin twisted in both hands. Tasha appeared at the service doorway, pale and humiliated, with Keisha beside her. She saw her own name on the screen and stopped as if she had walked into glass. Malika wanted to cross the room to her, but Derek was watching for exactly that. If she ran, he would call it emotion. If she shouted, he would call it instability. So she did what she had learned to do in court offices when powerful men lied in calm voices. She watched the paper. The review looked clean, but clean things often had fingerprints in the margins. The signature was too centered. The date format used slashes, while the termination letter used dashes. The manager name at the bottom was Monica Blake, but the employee ID number had one digit transposed. Malika took out her phone under the table and photographed the screen in burst mode before anyone could remove it. Then she opened her notes and typed the differences without looking down for long. "Derek," Richard Holloway said from near the wine display, his voice measured, "is this an employment matter we should discuss privately?" Derek gave a small, wounded smile. "I wish we could, Richard. But my fiancé has allowed personal feelings to threaten a business transaction that affects 200 employees." There it was. The accusation had turned. Not Tasha anymore. Malika. Monica touched the screen of her tablet. A second image appeared. An email supposedly from Tasha, apologizing for poor reliability and asking to leave before disciplinary action became official. Malika heard Tasha whisper from the doorway, "I didn't write that." But the room did not hear. The room was reading. Words on a screen always looked heavier than a crying woman. Derek turned toward Malika fully. "I love you," he said, and the cruelty of saying it in public made several guests soften. "But I need you to stop letting your sister manipulate you." Malika's mother flinched. Evelyn closed her eyes as if praying. Monica's expression remained sorrowful, almost holy. Malika understood the trap. If she defended Tasha as a sister, she would look biased. If she defended herself as a bride, she would look emotional. She needed proof with bones. She slipped behind a column near the guest book, keeping her face visible enough not to look like she was hiding, and sent the screen photos to her mentor with one line. Compare signature placement, date format, employee ID. Need timestamp check. Then she texted Keisha, "Don't speak yet. Get Tasha seated. Save everything." Across the room, Monica noticed Malika's thumb moving. Her soft face hardened for the first time. She leaned to the security guard, whispered, and pointed toward the service hallway. 2 minutes later, Keisha's phone buzzed in her apron. Malika saw her read it and go still. Her shift had been terminated for unauthorized use of employee records. Mr. Alvarez, standing near the kitchen doors, received the same message. The witnesses were being cut away one by one. Derek raised his glass. "Tonight, I choose honesty over embarrassment." Applause came from a few tables, first uncertain, then stronger as people. Followed the safest sound in the room. Tasha sat down slowly, tears shining but not falling. Malika looked at her sister, at the fake email, at the guests now clapping for the man who had built the fire and called it light. Then Derek extended his hand toward her in front of everyone. "Come here, Malika. Stand with me, and we can still save this night." The whole ballroom turned to watch whether she would take it. Malika looked at Derek's outstretched hand and saw, for one painful second, the life he was offering if she would only step over her sister to reach it. The guests were silent now. Even the quartet had stopped playing. Her mother's eyes begged her from across the room, not because she believed Derek, but because fear had always taught their family to survive first and ask questions later. Malika walked forward. Derek's shoulders loosened. A few people smiled with relief. Then she stopped 2 feet from his hand and placed her engagement ring in the center of his palm. The diamond looked small against his skin. "I won't stand beside a lie just because it dressed well." The room inhaled at once. Derek's face did not break completely, but something ugly moved behind his eyes. "You're making a mistake." "No," Malika said. "I made one when I confused your image with your character." She turned before he could answer and walked to Tasha. No speech. No tears for the room to study. She helped her sister stand, took Keisha's tray from her shaking hands, and guided them both through the service hallway while the applause behind her died like a door closing. In the back corridor, the expensive music disappeared. There were only fryer vents, rubber mats, and the hum of refrigeration units. Tasha leaned against the wall, both hands under her belly. "I'm sorry," she whispered. Malika stopped so suddenly Keisha almost bumped into her. "Do not apologize for what he did." Tasha's face crumpled, but she nodded. Malika called the clinic again and ordered a rideshare to the side entrance. Keisha stood beside the time clock, staring at the termination message on her phone. "My rent is due Friday," she said quietly. Mr. Alvarez came out of the kitchen carrying a cardboard box with his name written on the side in black marker. His apron was folded on top. He tried to smile, but his mouth would not hold it. The lie had a price now. It was not theory. It was 2 workers losing pay before dessert had even been served. Malika opened her purse, took out the emergency cash she had saved for the honeymoon airport shuttle, and pressed half into Keisha's hand, half into Mr. Alvarez's. "This is not enough," she said. "But it gets you through tonight." Keisha shook her head. "You need that. I needed to know who I was marrying. I found out. No one was watching. No guest would praise her. No camera would turn this into courage. That made the choice cleaner." Tasha's rideshare arrived near the loading dock, headlights cutting across stacked crates and wet pavement. Malika helped her into the back seat, tucked the folder beside her, then noticed Tasha's employee name tag had fallen near the curb. She bent to pick it up. The plastic badge was scratched at the edges, the clip bent from years of being pulled on and off a uniform. On the back, a tiny QR code had been half covered by a peeling sticker. Malika frowned. She had seen that sticker before on onboarding forms, used for quick access to the employee portal during orientation. She peeled it back with her thumbnail and scanned the code. A login page opened. Tasha wiped her eyes. "That thing never works. Monica said the old portal was shut down." Malika stared at the screen. It asked for Tasha's employee ID and birth date, not a password. Her fingers moved fast. The page loaded slowly, then opened into a plain, outdated dashboard with 3 files listed under archive documents. One was labeled Original Employment Agreement. Another was Schedule Acknowledgement. The third made Malika stop breathing for 1 beat. Accommodation request received. The old system had kept what the new file tried to erase. She opened the employment agreement first. The PDF carried a timestamp from the day Tasha was hired, and there, on page 7, was the clause Malika had helped edit months ago when Derek still asked her to look over simple language. Protection against retaliation for pregnancy-related. Accommodation requests. Mandatory HR review before termination. Written notice period. No electronic signature valid after account reset without dual verification. The fake review suddenly made sense. The backdated termination was not careless. It was designed to make Tasha look unprotected before the accommodation request existed. Malika forwarded the archived files to her mentor, to a new email she created on the spot, and to Tasha. Then she turned to Keisha. "Can you get me a photo of the time clock screen before they wipe today's punches?" Keisha swallowed. "Security is at the kitchen door." Mr. Alvarez lifted his box. "Not at receiving." Malika looked toward the ballroom doors, where Derek's voice had started again, smoother now, repairing the story without her. For the first time all night, she was not reacting to him. She was building the record he could not charm away. She removed the ring from Derek's palm in her mind, the apartment, the dinner, the future, all of it, and let it burn clean. "Then we go through receiving," she said. "And after that, I'm walking back into that room with the contract he forgot was still alive." Receiving was darker than the kitchen, lit by one buzzing fluorescent tube and the blue glow of the time clock mounted beside the back door. Keisha stood watch near the mop sink while Mr. Alvarez punched his code with hands that trembled only once. The screen opened to the day's records. Tasha's final shift was still there. Keisha's shift was still there. Mr. Alvarez's shift was still there. Malika photographed everything, then filmed the screen while Mr. Alvarez scrolled to the edit history. One line made him curse under his breath. Tasha's schedule had been changed at 11:47 p.m. by M. Blake. 2 days after her accommodation request. Malika sent the video to her mentor, then opened the archived contract on her phone and highlighted the clause with her thumb. "This breaks the fake review," she whispered. "But the signature?" Keisha asked. Malika looked toward the dining room. "We make them explain it before they know we have the reset rule." She walked back through the kitchen with the phone in one hand and the old contract in the other. No one stopped her this time. The ballroom doors opened just as Derek lifted a pen beside Richard Holloway and the Crescent Capital team. Cameras were up again. Evelyn stood behind Derek, smiling too hard. Monica held the locked briefcase against her hip, her gold key pin shining beneath the chandelier. Malika moved down the center aisle between the tables. Conversations fell away chair by chair. Derek lowered the pen. "Malika, not now." "Now," she said, and her voice carried without needing to rise. "Because you used this room to accuse my sister." Richard Holloway stepped forward. "Ms. Johnson, if this concerns employment claims, we need verifiable evidence." "Good," Malika said. "So do I." She turned to the AV technician. "Put my phone on the screen." Monica snapped. "Absolutely not." That was her first mistake. Richard looked at her. "Why not?" Monica recovered quickly. "Private employee information." Malika nodded. "Then let's start with the document Derek already showed publicly." The technician hesitated until Holloway gave one small nod. The fake review filled the screen again. Malika pointed to the signature. "Tasha allegedly signed this after a disciplinary review. But the employee ID has one digit wrong. The date format doesn't match HR's own termination notice. And the signature is electronically centered, not placed where Tasha signs on any original form." Derek gave a short laugh. "You're not a lawyer." "No," Malika said. "I'm the person who reads what men like you hope women won't understand." A few guests shifted. She opened the archived contract. Page 7 appeared. "This is Tasha's original employment agreement from the old employee portal. Clause 14B. No termination after a pregnancy accommodation request without dual HR review. Clause 18D. No electronic signature is valid after account reset unless two-step verification is recorded." Derek's face tightened. "Old portal records are unreliable." Malika looked at Monica. "Then why did Monica tell Tasha it was shut down?" Monica's lips parted. "I never said that." From the side doorway, Tasha's voice came thin but clear. "Yes, you did." Monica turned too fast. "You were upset. You misunderstood." Malika tapped the next video. The time clock edit history appeared, filmed seconds earlier. The room saw M. Blake beside the schedule change. Then Keisha's photo appeared. The tablet reflection with the message, "Move pregnant staff before review week. No exceptions before Crescent closes." Richard Holloway's expression changed. Not sympathy, calculation. Evidence had entered the room. Derek raised his hand. "That message is taken out of context." "Then give the context," Malika said. "Right now." He looked at Monica. Monica looked at the security guard. The guard looked at the briefcase. The silence linked them better than any confession could. Malika made the final cut. Her mentor's video call came through on speaker, voice calm and precise. "The archived PDF metadata is intact. The review shown tonight was created after the account reset. The reset log, sent by Mr. Alvarez, shows the employee account was accessed from an HR admin device at 10:32 p.m. The user was Monica Blake." The ballroom went completely still. Monica's mask cracked. "Derek told me to clean the file before Crescent saw it." Derek turned on her instantly. "I told you to handle a staffing issue, not forge anything." Richard Holloway stepped between them and the signing table. "Crescent Capital is suspending all acquisition discussions pending an independent investigation." Evelyn's hand flew to her necklace. The guests who had clapped for Derek now stared at their plates. Malika picked up the contract and read the retaliation clause aloud, every word landing in the same room where Tasha had been shamed. When she finished, no music filled the silence. No apology repaired it. Derek reached for the microphone, But Holloway took it first and placed it in Malika's hand. The truth was no longer a whisper in the hallway. It was on the screen, in the contract, in the logs, and in the mouths of people Derek could not fire fast enough. For a few seconds, Malika did not speak. The microphone felt heavy in her hand, not because she had nothing left to say, but because the room had finally learned how silence sounded when it belonged to the guilty. Tasha stood near the side door with one hand on her belly and the other wrapped around Keisha's fingers. Mr. Alvarez stood behind them with his cardboard box still in his arms. The people who had been treated like problems were now the only ones in the room with their backs straight. Richard Holloway closed the leather binder and handed it to his attorney. No documents leave this room until they're copied for review. Monica sat down as if her knees had gone missing. Her gold key pin tilted sideways on her blazer. No longer a symbol of access, only proof of the door she had helped lock. Derek tried one last time to become the man everyone expected. "Malika," he said, softer now, "we can handle this privately." She looked at him across the flowers, the untouched dinner plates, the photo of their smiling faces still frozen on the screen. "You made my sister's pain public. The correction will be public too." By Monday, Whitmore and Stone had an independent investigator. Monica was suspended pending termination and civil claims, and Derek had stepped down from operations while the board reviewed every pregnancy-related separation from the last 3 years. Keisha and Mr. Alvarez were reinstated with back pay before they even asked. Tasha received her lost wages, medical coverage, paid leave, and a written apology signed by people who had once expected her to disappear quietly. But the part that mattered most happened in a smaller room, away from chandeliers. Evelyn Whitmore came to Malika's mother with both hands folded. No pearls, no speech about timing. "I taught my son to protect the name," she said. "I did not teach him to protect people. That is on me too." Malika's mother cried then, not loudly, but like someone finally setting down years of fear. Derek apologized later in the parking lot, standing beside the same restaurant entrance where the engagement photo had welcomed guests. "I lost myself trying to save what I built." Malika listened. She owed herself that much. Then she shook her head. "No, Derek. You used what you built to make scared people smaller. Losing me is not your punishment. Facing that is." She left the ring in his palm. Not thrown, not dramatic, just returned. 1 month later, the private dining room opened again, but there were no orchids, no investors, no engagement photos. Folding chairs filled the floor. Restaurant workers came in after shifts, still smelling of coffee, fryer oil, perfume, rain, and long days. On the front table sat copies of real employment contracts, highlighters, pens, and a small sign handwritten by Tasha. "Read before you sign." Malika stood beside her sister, teaching women how to save emails, photograph schedules, request accommodations, and ask for records without apologizing for needing them. Keisha checked names at the door. Mr. Alvarez poured coffee. Tasha's baby kicked during the section on retaliation clauses, and the whole room laughed softly, the kind of laugh that does not hide pain but proves it did not win. At the end of the night, Malika took out the diamond ring one final time. It had once sparkled like a promise. Then it had felt like a lock. Now it sat in a small velvet box beside a receipt from the jeweler, sold to fund the first 3 months of contract night. Malika closed the box and slid the money envelope toward Tasha. Her sister touched the old termination letter lying beneath the workshop handouts, the same paper that had shaken against her belly that night. This time it did not shake. This time it was not an ending. It was evidence of the first door they refused to let stay closed.